Sandra Bland, Eric Garner, Alton Sterling, Philandro Castile, Freddie Blue, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, someone's mother, father, sister or brother, aunt and uncle. These, among thousands of others, were taken from us as a result of police brutality. Their voices were silenced when the world needed to hear them most. At times like these, we need community and togetherness. People that strive for change to end these harmful policies and regulations that hinder equality amongst Black and brown bodies. This is Black Lives Matter, a mindset more than an association that millions of people have already adopted, where they fight for change in the justice system to lift those voices that have perished. There are ways that they have already implemented policy change, nonstop efforts to bring awareness to the injustices of Black and brown people, and debunking the opposing side of BLM. You will understand why Black Lives Matter is influential not only for America, but the world. Since the protests and numerous meetings with state and local officials, policies and laws have been formulated to create a new era, implementing things like banning no-knock warrants, chokeholds, requiring mandatory body cameras on police officers, and dismantling qualified immunity so that officers that commit these crimes can be tried in court. One of the biggest issues was to defund these departments and allocate some of those funds to community programs. An article from The Hill states that Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti announced that he will seek to identify $100 million to $150 million in cuts to the LAPD, and that those funds will funnel into different areas such as jobs, health, and education. The article also talks about the New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio pledging to redirect some of New York City Police Department's funds towards youth and social services. He's committed to redirecting and repealing 50A, which prevents the public from accessing disciplinary records of police officers. Even outside of Black lives, BLM took the fight to the border, where they called on elected officials and ICE directors to investigate the excessive force and abuse ICE uses against immigrants and dismantle the oppressive systems and policies that they have in place. BLM brings awareness to the many injustices that people of color face every day, and they open the door for conversation and for people's voices to be heard. The new era of social media and cell phones has also helped this cause. Take an encounter with the police, for example. Say that an officer were to infringe upon your rights and or harm you without any legitimate reason. If this were to happen, say in the early 90s, there wouldn't have been any smartphones to record the police officer and hold him or her accountable. And the officer's word would be more favorable in court. But now, run-ins with law enforcement can be easily recorded and posted on social media to inform others of the things that are taking place. In continuation of awareness, the Black Lives Matter movement also educates the masses on knowing your rights and expanding your knowledge as such. Opposing arguments would be people that don't support Black Lives Matter. They conclude that the organization is divisive and puts Black lives over others. This is more famously known as the All Lives Matter movement. They perpetuate the idea that from the movement only comes riots and political propaganda. This argument can simply be debunked though. It's been clear since BLM's start that the phrase Black Lives Matter means that they matter also or as well. Being that in the eyes of racial injustice, they have not been mattering and need to start mattering. Only 7% of Black Lives Matter protests became violent. And even in that 7%, it was agitated by some other outside force. It is clear that this is just a counter argument and is not backed by any social or conceptual change like Black Lives Matter. Let's take the burning house analogy for an example. Say my house is burning, but my neighbor's house is perfectly fine. When the fire department gets there to put out the fire on my house, my neighbor is upset because no water is being put on her perfectly fine house while my house is burning. Why would you need the fire department for a non-burning house? This is the same thing that can be put into the BLM and ALM movement conversation. If Black and brown people are being oppressed, why would an all lives matter statement be made if they're simply not mattering?
It's a very special kind of silence. It's a very painful kind of silence because it removes our voice. It doesn't allow us to express our very specific pain. And it's worse because they're purporting to be advocates.
When we're saying Black Lives Matter and we're saying, Black lives are valued and they're important and Black voices are important, to then hear, well, all lives matter, it just seems like someone who is looking for a distraction or a way to derail the conversation.
At first, when that first became like a hashtag, it was like, so you really don't get it? Like, how is that your response to me saying Black Lives Matter?
Like, no one would ever go to a breast cancer walk and criticize them for talking about breast cancer. You wouldn't walk up to someone who has experienced breast cancer, survived it, or someone who's lost somebody from breast cancer and say, how dare you talk about breast cancer? Why not talk about colon cancer? How dare you exclude other cancers? You would never do that.
If all lives mattered, then it wouldn't be difficult to specify and say that Black lives matter. Generalizing the statement with all lives matter downplays the abuse of Black and brown people, simply put. So with all of this new information, what can you do with it? And how can you become a part of a movement like this? Protest, donate, and vote. Protest. Join your local BLM protests and support the movement on the grounds. Make t-shirts, make posters, go out and fight for your rights. And fight for your brothers and sisters' rights as well. You don't have to be a person of color to protest. Donate. You need to donate to any Black Lives Matter organizations or the NAACP chapters to help fund programs and enact change. Most importantly, please go out and vote. It starts with us. Vote for officials that will work for policies that align with your beliefs. Martin Luther King Jr. said, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere," meaning that injustice doesn't have to personally affect you to want change for your brothers and sisters. It begins with us, and we can be the change that we wish to see. Sincerely signed, a proud Black woman.